In 1970, Chevrolet dropped a bomb on the muscle car world, the 454 LS6 V8. With 450 horsepower straight from the factory, it was the most powerful engine ever put in a production car at the time, but just as quickly as it arrived, it vanished. No farewell, no explanation, just silence. So what really happened? Why would Chevy kill off an engine that made the Chevelle SS a quarter-mile monster? Was it banned, silenced by regulators, or was there something even darker going on? What if I told you this engine was more than just metal and pistons? It was a threat to insurance companies, to rival manufacturers, and even to General Motors itself. And that's exactly why it had to disappear. This isn't just a story about horsepower. It's about ambition, controversy, and the ticking time bomb that was the 454 LS6. Buckle up, because we're going under the hood of one of the most legendary and mysteriously short-lived engines in automotive history. We'll reveal why it was built, who it scared, and how it may have changed the muscle car game forever. And the biggest question of all, did Chevy bury the LS6 to protect us, or to protect themselves? From drag strip domination to government crackdowns, this is the story of an engine too powerful to survive, or so they wanted us to believe. Before the oil crisis, before emissions strangled muscle, there was the LS6, raw, brutal, and untamed. It could outpace European exotics and make even seasoned racers nervous. Some say it was Detroit's last scream before the hammer fell. Others believe it was never meant to last. But one thing's certain, the truth behind the LS6 is far more shocking than you think. To understand the rise of the 454 LS6, we have to rewind to the end of the 1960s, a time when the muscle car era was at full throttle. Chevy had already flexed serious muscle with the 396 and 427 big blocks, but Ford, Mopar, and Pontiac weren't backing down. The horsepower war was heating up fast, so Chevy did what any self-respecting performance brand would do. They went bigger, much bigger. The result was the LS6, a 454 cubic inch big block V8 unleashed in the 1970 Chevelle SS. This wasn't just a bored-out engine, it was purpose-built for street and strip domination. From the moment it was announced, enthusiasts knew something serious had arrived. On paper, it claimed 450 horsepower and 500 lb-ft of torque, numbers that still impress today. But insiders say it was even more powerful. Many dyno tests from the era clocked real output closer to 500 horses. The engine featured 11, 25.1 compression, massive intake valves, solid lifter camshafts, forged internals, and a Holley 800 CFM carburetor on an aluminum manifold. It was all muscle, no fluff. The LS6 was part of the RPO Z15 package, an option for the 1970 Chevelle SS 454. But not just anyone could grab one. These cars were built with the racer in mind. Beefed-up suspensions, cowl induction hoods, F41. Performance upgrades. This was no grocery getter. This was a road-legal missile. The marketing pitch was pure American bravado. The most powerful production car in the land. And it wasn't a lie. At a time when Detroit was obsessed with outdoing each other, the LS6 became Chevy's nuclear option. It was faster than a Boss 429 Mustang. It could hang with a 426 Hemi, and it cost a fraction of what European sports cars charged for similar performance. Drag racers fell in love. On slicks, the LS6-powered Chevelle could run mid-13s off the showroom floor, and that was without tuning. With minor upgrades, it could drop into the 12s. It didn't just win races, it embarrassed rivals. But more than just stats, the LS6 had presence. It growled with authority. It had a reputation that spread through car meets and high school parking lots like wildfire. This was the car your parents warned you about, and the one every kid with a lead foot dreamed of owning. And here's the kicker. The LS6 wasn't Chevy's full potential. Rumors swirled of an even wilder version, the LS7, which was briefly mentioned in dealer materials and rated at 465 horsepower, but never made it to mass production. Some say it was too dangerous. Others claim insurance companies shut it down before it hit the streets. Regardless, for that 1 year, 1970, the LS6 stood at the summit of American performance. It was the mechanical middle finger Chevy threw at anyone who doubted their muscle. But as we'll see next, that kind of firepower came with consequences. The 454 LS6 didn't just roar, it shook the ground. Its thunderous exhaust note wasn't just sound, it was a warning. This was a car that didn't care about subtlety. It announced its presence before you saw it, and once you did, you knew something dangerous was near. With 450 horsepower and a monstrous 500 lb-ft of torque, the gay LS6 Chevelle wasn't just powerful for its time. It still holds its own today. It dominated on drag strips with bone-stock quarter-mile times in the 13s, humiliating rivals who thought they had a chance. And this wasn't with modern tires or tuning. It was raw, unfiltered, and terrifyingly effective. Dealerships reported young drivers crashing these monsters within days of purchase. Insurance companies took notice fast. Premiums on LS6 Chevelles skyrocketed. Some companies even refused coverage altogether. The LS6 quickly gained a reputation, not just as a beast but a liability. A rolling thunderstorm wrapped in steel and fury. And the media? They weren't helping. Headlines warned about Detroit's irresponsible obsession with speed. Lawmakers started sniffing around. Safety advocates questioned why a streetcar could outgun most race cars. Critics asked, who needs 450 horsepower on public roads? Meanwhile, Ford and Mopar were sweating. The 426 Hemi had competition, and the Boss 429 was looking over its shoulder. Chevy had upped the ante, and the rest of Detroit knew it. But it wasn't just the numbers that made the LS6 terrifying, it was the way it delivered. Instant torque, neck-snapping launches, and a willingness to break traction in any gear. Drivers who weren't prepared often found themselves facing the wrong direction. It wasn't for the faint of heart. Even seasoned racers respected and feared the LS6. It didn't just beat you. It humiliated you, and that's what made it a problem. Not just for competitors, but for GM itself, because as the LS6 conquered streets and strips, whispers started. Whispers that it had gone too far. There were reports of backdoor meetings, of nervous executives questioning if they'd created a monster they couldn't control. The LS6 was a PR nightmare waiting to happen. It was too loud, too fast, too powerful. And that's when the silence began. Whispers that someone, or something, was about to shut it down forever before it tore the whole system apart. One burnout at a time. For a machine that made so much noise, the end of the 454 LS6 came with a whisper. 1 year. That's all it got. By 1971, the LS6 was gone from Chevrolet's catalog. No press release. No farewell tour. It simply disappeared. And to this day, many still wonder why. Officially, GM never declared it banned. But the signs were all there. Behind closed doors, the pressure was building. Insurance companies had drawn a line in the sand. They were tired of high horsepower cars and the skyrocketing accident rates that came with them. Policies for LS6-equipped Chevelles were so expensive that buyers backed off and dealers struggled to move inventory. Then came the regulators. The early 70s ushered in a new era of emissions standards, safety concerns, and political scrutiny. Government agencies started cracking down on anything that looked like a street-legal race car. Muscle cars were public enemy number one. Suddenly, the LS6, once a symbol of American excess, became a corporate liability. Internally, GM faced a dilemma. They had created a monster that was too fast for the roads and too dangerous for their public image. And with whispers of the mythical LS7, a supposedly even more powerful follow-up, GM had to act quickly. Quietly, they pulled the plug. There were no protests, no public outcry, just confusion from enthusiasts and silence from Detroit. The LS6 didn't go out in a blaze of glory. It was buried under a mountain of paperwork and policy. Some insiders claim there were engines still in crates ready to be installed when the order came down. Others say a few LS7s were built and tested, then locked away. Whether true or not, it added fuel to the myth and deepened the growing mystery. One former engineer who asked not to be named said it best. The LS6 wasn't killed by competition. It was killed by fear and politics. And just like that, The muscle car era started to collapse. What began as horsepower wars and badge engineering turned into a retreat. The LS6 became the high water mark, the final word in brute force. Before the oil crisis, emissions controls and insurance premiums killed the dream. It wasn't banned with a gavel. It was erased by bureaucracy. And the silence around its demise, that was no accident. It was deliberate strategy. It was calculated corporate survival. Though the LS6 only lasted one model year, its legacy has proven anything but short-lived. For many, the 1970 Chevy SS454 wasn't just another muscle car, it was the pinnacle. The moment when raw power, bold design, and street-ready rebellion peaked in perfect alignment, and then vanished. That disappearance only added to the legend. Enthusiasts began whispering about why GM would pull such a dominant engine so quickly. Was it emissions, insurance, or was it something more conspiratorial? A silencing order from within, fearful of lawsuits or government blowback. The mysterious LS7 didn't help quiet those whispers. Advertised briefly in GM dealer documents as a 465 horsepower successor, it was slated for release but never reached showrooms. Only a handful of crate engines were ever confirmed. Some say test cars existed. Others insist they were destroyed. What's certain is that the LS7 fed the mythos. If the LS6 was a beast, the LS7 was the monster that GM locked in the basement. Collectors today treat the LS6 Chevelle like a holy grail. Original cars fetch astronomical prices. Rebuilds, clones, and even tribute cars are sought after with religious fervor. But what's more fascinating is how this engine's DNA never really went away. In fact, some believe it returned, quietly and cleverly, flash forward decades. The LS series engines in modern Chevys bear no visual resemblance to the big blocks of the 70s, but their spirit, it's there. Lightweight, powerful, and incredibly efficient. The LS6 badge even reappeared in the early 2000s, slapped onto a high-performance variant of the 5.7L V8 used in the C5 Corvette Z06. Was it a tribute or a quiet resurrection? And then there's the LT6, the naturally aspirated flat-plane crank V8 in the C8 Corvette ZR6. Some engineers whisper that it borrows flow dynamics inspired by the porcupine-headed big blocks of old. A stretch? Maybe. But enthusiasts love to connect the dots and keep the legend alive. The truth is, the LS6 was never just about numbers. It was about attitude. It was GM's way of saying, we can outgun anybody, anytime. And that attitude still pulses through Chevrolet's veins. Every time a Camaro lights up a drag strip or a Corvette carves a canyon road, the LS6's spirit is riding shotgun. It's in every tuned exhaust note, every high compression pull, every tire roasting launch. The LS6 may have been silenced, but it was never forgotten. Its legacy lives in garages, in stories passed down at car shows, in the eyes of teenagers seeing one for the first time and feeling their pulse spike. It's more than metal now. It's myth. And myths don't die. They evolve and return. The 454 LS6 may have lasted only a moment, but that moment echoed through history. It sparked rebellion, commanded respect, and refused to be erased. And if you listen close, you can still hear it rumble in the distance, waiting for its next resurrection, just like true legends always do. So what really happened to the 454 LS6? Was it banned by regulators, silenced by insurance companies, or buried by GM's own fear of its power? The truth is, it was all of the above, and none. The LS6 wasn't just discontinued, it was erased from the mainstream, not because it failed, but because it succeeded too well. It delivered more horsepower than Detroit was ready to admit to. It terrified boardrooms and broke street tires. It made insurance adjusters nervous and sparked congressional hearings on automotive safety. It was a symbol of excess in a time when the country was shifting toward caution and control. But you can't silence a legend forever. The LS6 remains, a touchstone in American performance history, the apex of the muscle car boom. It proved that a production vehicle could offer race-level power. And even though it lasted just 1 year, it made more noise than most engines do in a lifetime. Collectors still hunt them. Tuners still talk about them. Builders still dream about them. Historians still write about them, and whenever you hear a rumbling V8 echoing down a two-lane blacktop, part of that sound is the LS6, still alive, still roaring in the soul of American muscle. So next time you see a Chevy SS or hear an engine that shakes windows and hearts alike, remember the LS6. It wasn't supposed to survive, but legends rarely follow the rules. They rewrite them and leave burnouts in their wake. If this story ignited your passion for horsepower history, hit that like button. Subscribe for more deep dives into the machines that made America rumble. And leave a comment. What's your favorite forgotten powerhouse? Until next time, keep the revs high, the tires warm, the throttle wide open, and the legends alive.